So, yeah, anyone who wants to come over and check it out, give it up for Mitchell. Woo!
Sweet. All right, hi everyone. My name is Mitchell. I'm a research engineer at Common, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Desire Stack. For anyone who's interested, no pressure. All right, yeah, just making sure everyone can hear me. I'll just explain a little bit, what Desire is, how it works, why it's important. So, most of the time, driving looks like this. You're just in your lane, you're moving straight, there's no decisions to be made, you just have to stay in the center of the lane, and you're good. But then, every once in a while, you come across something that looks like this, right? And you have to make a decision. You have to decide, am I going to go left or right? Am I going to take the exit or not? And we call these decisions desire. And these decisions are critical for navigating our road system. So we need to communicate with the model about these decisions. We want the model to predict which way the human is going to go, and we want to tell the model which way we'd like it to go. And so we need a simple API that we can use to communicate with the model. So our API looks like this. There are 3 types of desires. Turns, which are just 90 degrees, self-explanatory. Keeps, which are like exits, forks in the road, lanes widening out into 2, and lane changes. So we eventually want OpenPilot to be able to perform all 3 of these maneuvers. And I'm just going to start with lane changes, because we've shipped those, and we've already talked about it a little bit in the day, and it's easy to understand. So we want the model to learn how to do lane changes end to end. We want to tell the model when a lane change is about to happen, and then the model will learn to adjust its prediction over into the next lane to match what's about to happen in the ground truth that the human driver is about to do. So yeah, we just have to find the lane changes, tell the model when one is about to happen, and the rest is just magic of end-to-end learning. So we just have to detect the lane changes in our data set. We have this large data set of driving videos. We want to scan through it and find all of the lane changes and label them. And of course, we don't want to use humans to do this. We want to do this in an end-to-end way. So what are we going to do? Well, the first thing you might think is, well, why don't we just detect the lane lines? And then when you cross a lane line, that's a lane change, right? That seems really easy. And how could that possibly go wrong? So you can see here, this looks like it might work, right? We have some lane lines that are very clearly marked, and you can see as we make a lane change, we move from one side to the other. So it seems like maybe this could work, and we could detect lane lines this way. But then you find some roads that look like this, right? You have lane changes where you're not really going across a lane line anymore. And then you have lane changes that look like this, where you're on a road with no lane lines at all. And so it starts to kind of seem hopeless at this point. If we are using the lane lines, we're never going to detect lane changes in cases like this. And so this seems like maybe it won't work after all. So can we detect lane changes using the lane lines? No, we cannot. This is never going to work. So we need a better strategy, and we need some new ideas. So what are we going to do? Well, Harold mentioned earlier about how we have these really powerful tools we can use. We have the localizer to tell us how we're moving through the scene. We have the small offset simulator for testing, and so we can do these rollouts for training. And then we actually have a third really useful tool at our disposal that we haven't really talked about very much today, and that is our driving models. So we can use the driving models in the simulator and see where the human and the model want to do different things, where they take different paths. And this is really useful. As we'll see, when this happens, it means that there's a desire event occurring, and we can find this and mark it. So we're going to do simulator rollouts on all of our data. We're going to let the model drive in the simulator and see where it drifts away from what the human did in the original video. And this will tell us all sorts of interesting things. So we can see here, this is a lane change. The model on the right is driving in the simulator, and we can see that as the human moves into the next lane, the model just stays where it is. It hasn't been told to do a lane change, so it just does the most likely thing. It stays in its lane, and it just keeps moving forward. And so as these two paths drift apart, we can detect this and we can mark it as a lane change in an end-to-end way. And this also works great for turns. You can see in this slide, the human driver makes a turn, and the model just happily keeps going straight, right past the turn, and we can see that there's a clear divergence of the paths between the model and the human driver. So this works great. For both turns and lane changes, we can find these and we can mark them without any human labeling. But we run into a bit of a problem when we have to deal with forks in the road. So in this case, you can see that there's kind of more than one path that you could take. There's no one clear default option anymore. And so it just so happens in this case that the model decides to go the same way that the human did. They both go to the right. And so if this happens, we're going to miss this fork. We're not going to pick it up because the model and the human driver took the same path. Their paths never diverged. So this is a problem. What do we do about this? So if there's more than one obvious path, there's actually a pretty simple solution to this. We can just use two simulators. We'll have one simulator pushing the model a little bit to the left, and the other pushing the model a little bit to the right. And we'll see that when we do this, the model will actually take different paths at the fork. The one that we push left will go left, and the one we push right will go right. So you can see here, just giving the models a little bit of rotation on each frame, just a tiny, tiny bit, a fraction of a degree, and we'll see that indeed the model that we're pushing left goes to the left, and the model that we're pushing right goes to the right. And so now we can detect the divergence between these two models, and we can mark our forks. So in the end, our desire stack looks for the difference in the path between the two models doing these two simulated rollouts and the human driver. And anytime any of these three diverge from the other, we can mark it as desire, and depending on the headings and how far these paths diverge from each other, we can figure out if it's a lane change or a keep or a turn. And that's my talk. I was going to do questions. We're a little short on time, so I think I'm just going to hand it over to Drew. But thank you for listening.